they're like similar to each other, which is nice. So it's like not too hard to like jump from each one. Hello, how are you doing today? Sorry. I'm good. I know you weren't expecting this, but my name's Jim. This is my friend Nathaniel. And we're just trying to spread awareness about this awesome website. There's a QR code on the back. This helps bring Bible-based advice to help with a lot of questions that people have about like maybe suffering or depression or anxiety. And if you want, maybe I could swing by later and see how you felt about it.
Sure. What is it you guys believe?
So we believe many different things, but we believe in the Bible.
Hey, I'm so sorry. Eddie, oh my gosh.
We believe that Jesus is God's son.
Was there a specific that you had a question on?
Well, I guess I'm being curious, like what differentiates you guys from like other Christians?
Oh, that's a good question.
So we believe everything straight from the Bible.
Mhm.
A lot of we don't like celebrate any holidays which aren't brought up in the Bible, which a lot of other and so they're not associated with serving God first, and they're putting us first. So we don't.
Which ones are those?
Here, one sec.
Herod, who had John the Baptist beheaded, one of the pharaohs that had, I think it was cupbearer killed.
What about like Job's kids celebrating celebrations each one on their day on their birthday?
I am not familiar with that scripture.
Yeah, I can give it to you. Well,
I guess what it comes down to is like there are topics of or references of birthdays being celebrated in the scriptures.
so like does something only being referred to in bad context mean God doesn't want us to do it?
It's more like we weren't told to do it, if that makes sense. Like, so we do celebrate occurrences like anniversaries for weddings, and we memorialize deaths, and we memorialize Jesus' death every year. And so, like on the topic of birthdays, like kind of like Jamin mentioned, most of the references are negative, and it wasn't expressly like commanded of Jesus followers. So that's why we don't celebrate them.
I mean, you technically argue the same thing about dogs, right?
What's that?
Like dogs are never mentioned in a positive context anywhere in the Bible. It's always people being eaten by dogs or dogs eating the scraps and dogs being filthy and prohibiting it. Sorry, I knew someone in school that was a witness and didn't celebrate birthdays, and I never got a really clear explanation.
So I did find this. So it did talk about Job. So it says, when Job's son held a banquet on the house of each one on his own day, it should be supposed that they were celebrating their birthdays. Day in this verse translates to the Hebrew word yom, which refers to a period of time from sunrise to sunset. On the other hand, a birthday is a compound of the two Hebrew words yom and then and then so this connection between day and one's birthday may be noted in Genesis 40:20. So maybe the translation between different Bibles might have read it differently. So in the translation,
because it seems to be pretty the pretty common translation is birthday. Like King James says birthday. So yeah, I'll take a look at this.
And maybe I could come back and answer any other questions.
Sure. You mind me asking, like, so there's been a lot of political fight here in Washington State about the trying to push for mandatory reporting of clergy, like requiring that clergy, if they know about like child sex abuse, that they have to report it to the police. There's been all those scandals with the Catholics and stuff. Like, what is your guys' take on that?
I am
not for.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's just a bit big deal.
I think in the past, the way they handled it was more secretive. There wasn't like a lot of communication with families of like, hey, like, by the way, like, don't let your kid be around this person. But I know for a fact now that some things have changed, and so like if there is somebody in the congregation that has had accusations or been committed of something, accused of something, they'll let you know. So
How do you know?
they'll just say, hey, like, by the way, like, don't let your kid be alone with this person.
Like, has that happened to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
because I
once,
knew
but
someone.
it's full of imperfect individuals, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes people may be protecting the wrong individual just because they feel like that is their need, but can't read hearts. Sometimes accusations are hard to prove also,
Mhm.
right? Like even in like a
Yeah,
court
I mean,
of
that's
law.
why you tell the police.
Exactly.
Let them sort it out. Yeah.
So, so some things are changing, but I know in the past that some situations have definitely been mishandled and probably should have been handled differently. So,
And I mean, like, has there been like documentation, like official statements are telling people to handle it differently?
I guess like recently, like we study a magazine called The Watchtower
Mhm.
on a weekly basis, and a few months ago we had an entire article on that subject. I don't think we could try to
And
Yeah.
I mean,
find
just
that.
last Thursday.
But basically, and so just 2 days ago we had another one, basically about how to like educate your children in a way to like not have sex be a taboo subject, right?
Yeah.
And, like, which boundaries are appropriate, when to let somebody know, how to let them know that you're not comfortable with however things are progressing. So, yeah, hold on one second. Did you? I'm just gonna look it up on the online library real quick. So, what was your name, by the way?
Chris.
Chris. Nice to meet you, Chris.
You do. What was yours again?
He's Nathaniel, and I'm Jamie.
Okay.
But yeah, so just from like one of the things, so this is one that we on Thursday. So it's like safeguarding your children, and why it's critical. And then so it brought out Second Timothy, well, it's 13, it's a better one. So it's but wicked men and impostors will advance from bad to worse, misleading and being misled. And so it brings out that the wicked people in verse 13 that we just read refers to people who sexually abuse children. And so it's important for parents to then discuss that with their children.
Yeah, but I mean, does it say that like the clergy are required to tell the police or tell the congregation?
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to find that Watchtower article. Let's see. Yeah. Or I haven't found it yet. Looking for some keywords. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not finding it right now. But
Yeah.
Maybe we can.
Yeah, I used to live in Spokane, and I still kind of follow the news over there. And like there was a big article a couple weeks ago, or late last year, that was talking about the processes, and so I've been curious about that, like since reading about it, that
Yeah.
they basically don't report anything, and so yeah, I mean, I'm genuinely curious about it. And I actually know someone who was in that article. I guess I'm just like curious. How old are your kids?
My kid's 6.
If your kids grew up and didn't want to be Jehovah's Witnesses, would you shun them?
It kind of depends on a few circumstances, but yeah.
Like if they
Fellowship for following a lifestyle or a life course that is contrary to the Bible standards, then yeah, that would be the case. If for some reason they felt discouraged and they stopped attending meetings, but like for the most part, like their life course is not like something that contradicts Bible standards, and you can still associate with them. So it depends, right? So there's definitely like scriptural guidance.
They didn't
for
change anything. They just like, I don't think it's true. I don't believe it's true.
It's hard to say because I don't know the circumstances, but I mean, like, I don't think so. Like, that wouldn't be grounds for like never speaking to your child again. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm interested to hear more. I'll read whatever's on the website. I guess I have one other question for you guys. Someone, if your governing body lost God's favor, how would you know?
I think it would come out in how we're able to progress, right? Because like having God's spirit or Jehovah's spirit is like essential to being able to grow as an organization. Like everyone is working for free, right? So it takes a lot of.
So like, what would it look like that would tell you that they've lost favor?
That's I don't know.
I would think that so as an organization, you can go to any Kingdom Hall, any part of the world, and you can find the same exact meeting everywhere.
Yeah.
So that unity can only be brought up with someone that has the Spirit of God with it.
Is that you're saying like if they weren't teaching the same thing in every Kingdom Hall, then you would know the governing bodies lost God's favor?
But you would see the disunity.
The disunity, right, and the peace, right? So like we have peace amongst our congregation, right? And there's also just like looking at the scriptures, right? We've outlined certain things that we can identify as like what identifies aspects of true worship based on the Bible. It's not like based on what we say or anything like that. Like it's like, we could go to a scripture and be like, okay, this is why we say this. It's like, why do we use Jehovah's name? It's scripturally based.
So the governing body can't just be like, change it.
Exactly. So
So you guys believe the same thing like 50 years ago that you did now?
So we changed things slightly just by studying it more.
Yeah.
But the foundation is all the same. And it's all based on the Bible. So the more we discover from the Bible, we might slightly change something.
But
it's
can you like disagree with it?
Well, if the evidence points to it and you study it.
Yeah. So like if you change something and you think the old interpretation was right, or you don't agree with it, like what happens to you?
Depends on how your attitude is, right? Like if you're defiant and you feel like I know better than these individuals, depending on how you approach the subject, like you could get disfellowship, which is like what most people refer to as like excommunicated, right? But it takes a pretty obstinate individual for that to happen, right? So like there'll be a lot of opportunities for you to either study or, and a lot of times, there have been like time periods, like 1975 was a period where they were looking at the scriptures like, hey, you know what? Like up until this point, people have been allowed to smoke and be Jehovah's Witnesses, but we realized based off of the scripture in Romans where it talked about defilement of the flesh, right? Like we should take that literally because smoking defiles the flesh. That people didn't really necessarily know, I think even at that time, that smoking could cause lung cancer. It's like people, like I think the cigarette ads at the time were like, cigarette like makes me be able to opens up my lungs, I can breathe. So it's like they're ahead of their time, but
people were like, doctors recommend smoking.
A lot of people had to hang up for that. Like a lot of people left over the decisions that are made don't make sense sometimes.
Is that what happened in 1975?
Yeah.
Wasn't it like weren't witnesses like quoted in newspapers saying that the end of the world was coming in 1975?
I don't think
that's
that was
in the
actually,
New York Times.
I think that was a misunderstanding.
There's recordings of them saying it on stage. I mean, like, I'm sorry, I've researched it a bit. Like I said, I have a friend in Spokane that was shunned, and
Yeah.
like in one thing they told me was that in like
I mean, I'm not saying that I wasn't alive back then. I know there was like something that kind of, happened along those grounds and stuff, but like, can they be wrong or can they get, what's weird about that is like, um, I'm pretty sure like those are like misquotations, right? Because like even in the scriptures, like Jesus has said, like, no one knows the day or the hour, right? So it's like it doesn't make sense to me that they would actually be on the record as saying like it's going to happen in 1975. But I do know that, like understandings change as times come and go, right? Like, and even for like Jesus' apostles, there were moments in time where they said something and they had to be corrected by Jesus, right? Because it wasn't right. And so like back to your other questions, like how would you know if they still had Jehovah's favor, right, or God's favor? And I think was it Peter corrected by the Apostle Paul for not hanging out like, hey,
yeah,
by the way, these Gentiles are also our brothers and sisters. What are you doing? Like you're setting a bad example. So I mean, they're not infallible, right? And so there have been times where they had to be corrected, and that's been apparent. It's like, okay, so I think how you can look at it is like, okay, you've made a mistake potentially. How are you gonna respond to this? Like because Jesus and his Father, they still have to use an organization to support their form of true worship, right? And it's like you can either rise to that occasion or you can be shunned and they'll find some other avenue to get their message and their purpose done.
But I mean, how do you know that they have God's favor?
I mean, looking at our record, like we're doing pretty good, and so I would feel like that would be like growth would be one aspect of that.
So like if growth leveled off, you would think that's a sign that maybe they don't have it? Or like I'm just trying to figure out like under what circumstances.
It's like I haven't really thought of it, so I mean, but basically like they're looking at the teachings, looking at all of what we refer to as fruit, like that fruit comes in as people, listening to our message, being willing to accept it, and so with all of those things, that's kind of how we look at it. It's like it's not just one particular thing; it's like a combination of things. And to answer your question, it's like it's like honestly, like I don't know, but that's where faith comes in as well, right? So it's like if I go and I look at other organizations, do any of those organizations have a better track record? Do any of those organizations have a better understanding of the Bible? To me, the answer is no. So it's like,
yeah, I mean, I guess
up as a system of things, it's like you might have some questions, you might have some doubts, right? There might be some wrong decisions, but overall, like if the vessel is being used for the worthy purpose, then that's the vessel that we need to use, right?
Yeah. So I mean, like, I guess I'm not going to get feeling like I'm getting a clear understanding of like how do you know that vessel is the right one?
Well, what I mentioned, like like looking at the scriptures and like kind of going down the bulleted list of like these are things that involve true worship, and like you can look and compare other organizations pretty easily, and you can either check or cross out based off of certain things that we know in the scriptures are requirements, right? There's other things that are like maybe nice to have, good to have, like a lot of churches have like soup kitchens and stuff. Those things are
like loving your neighbor as yourself kind of stuff.
And those are nice to have, but it's not a requirement. you know, it's like on an individual basis, like those things are also a part of us, but like as a organization, it's like it's a little bit different. Like we have actually a relief effort that we do all across the world. Like whenever there's a disaster that strikes, and we have brothers and sisters, like we go and help rebuild our brothers and sisters' homes, but also the people in the neighborhood. As long as we have like supplies and manpower to assist with that, you know, we actually sometimes are in
That's
areas
cool.
before the Red Cross.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like we're like ready, and so
Yeah, that's neat.
yeah, you know, there's other things. So it's like we don't do so many like soup kitchens because we feel like that can be a crutch. But yeah, there are other things that we definitely.
But maybe I could write down some of your questions, research them, and then come back
Sure,
with
yeah.
answers. So I wrote
Yeah.
down that one that we just talked about. So about like how do you know that the governing body has God's Holy Spirit?
Okay.
And then is there any others that you wanted me to?
I feel like there was another one, but I'm blanking on it.
Here, I could redo birthdays too.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Okay, and then I could come back with more information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and the child to be salty.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that was good. But yeah, those are the main things I was curious about. I will. Yeah, I'll check it out.
All right, cool.
Nice to meet you, Chris.
Yeah, nice meeting you guys.
Have a good day.
You too.